You'll always be the broke one, because you don't have a real job. The words slapped me across the face in front of our entire family. My sister Ashley is standing there with her wine glass, smirking, loud enough for everyone at the reunion to hear. My cheeks burn hot. I want to sink through the floor as a hush falls over the living room. Aunt Marie's jaw actually drops. Uncle Kevin suddenly finds his shoes real interesting. I can feel my mom's hand tense on my shoulder. Ashley's grin just widens, and she lets out a sharp little laugh. Like she's said something funny. Like she hasn't just humiliated me in our parents' house with 20 relatives watching. I swallow hard, tasting shame and the bitter tang of cranberry sauce from dinner. I open my mouth to respond, but nothing comes out. My throat is dry. The humiliation and anger swirl inside me, freezing me in place. Ashley cocks an eyebrow, as if daring me to say something back. I can't. I feel like I'm 12 years old again, being mocked in front of the class. My heart is pounding so loud I barely catch Grandma's best friend, old Miss Jolene, gasp softly in the corner. The broke one. That's what my own sister just called me, like it's my title. There's an awful, heavy silence. I see my dad near the fireplace, his smile from moments ago now gone. He looks down at the ground, rubbing the back of his neck. Mom's face is flushed with anger or embarrassment, maybe both. I hear a couple of my cousins whispering, and Ashley just stands there, swirling her wine like she's queen of the damn world. Ashley, that's enough, Mom snaps finally, voice low and warning. She shoots Ashley a death glare. Mom's trying to keep the peace, but it's too late. The damage is done. I feel a prickle behind my eyes. I'm so angry and hurt I might actually cry, and that would just be the cherry on top, wouldn't it? My sister would love that, seeing me break down like a little kid. I clench my fists under the table, staring at a half-eaten slice of turkey on my plate to avoid everyone's eyes. My face is so hot I might actually catch fire. I can't believe she just said that. Well, a part of me can believe it, because this is classic Ashley. But doing it here, now, like this, in front of everyone at Thanksgiving dinner? That's a new low, even for her. I hear Ashley take another sip of wine. I can practically feel her satisfied grin even without looking up. Humiliated. That word isn't strong enough for what I feel right now. I feel betrayed, furious, and so small all at once. She's my sister, 2 years older than me, and she's always known exactly how to twist the knife. I stare holes into my plate, my vision blurring. I can't let her see me cry. Not here. Not now. I push my chair back abruptly, the wooden legs screeching against the hardwood floor. Everyone flinches at the sound. Without a word, I turn and walk briskly out of the dining room, needing to escape before the hot tears spill over. I make a beeline for the kitchen or anywhere else, I'm not even sure. I just need air. As I leave, I hear Mom hissing, "Look what you did," to Ashley. And Ashley's mocking reply, "Oh come on, it was a joke." A joke. Right. How hilarious. My throat tightens further, and I push through the swinging kitchen door, nearly knocking over a chair on my way out. I end up in the laundry room adjacent to the kitchen, the one quiet spot I can find. I lean against the washer and dryer, chest heaving, trying to get a full breath. My hands are trembling. Through the door, I can hear the low murmur of my family beginning to talk again, awkwardly picking up the pieces of the night that Ashley just shattered. Plates clink. Someone nervously laughs at a joke my uncle makes, probably trying to cut the tension. I wipe my eyes quick. One tear escaped down my cheek despite my best efforts, and I scrub it away, angry at myself. I hate that she can still do this to me. After all these years, Ashley still knows exactly how to tear me down in one sentence. I take a deep breath, leaning my head back against the cabinet. She has no idea. Not a single clue about what's coming next. If she did, she sure as hell wouldn't have pulled that stunt. The irony is so rich I could laugh, if I wasn't on the verge of either punching a hole in the wall or sobbing. Or both. I breathe in and out, counting to 10 like my therapist taught me. Yep, thank you Ashley. Years of being treated like crap by her landed me in therapy, not that she'd ever take responsibility. My heartbeat starts to slow from jackhammer status. The initial shock is fading, replaced by a steady simmering anger. And beneath that, a strange satisfaction, because I know something she doesn't. She thinks I'm just the family failure, the one who can't get his life together. She thinks she's Miss Perfect with her 6-figure salary and fancy job and that I'm nothing. She thinks she just publicly cemented my status as the broke one forever. But she's wrong. So wrong. Alright. I need to collect myself. If I storm back in there now and shout surprise, "I'm actually rich now, you asshole," it'll just turn into a screaming match. That's not how I want this to go down. Not here in front of everyone while I'm shaking and emotional. No, I want the full effect. I want her to feel what I felt. I want her to hurt like she just hurt me. And maybe I also want every person in that room to see her for who she really is. I run my fingers through my hair, trying to tame the whirlwind of feelings. It's hard to believe this is real. For so long I've been the one on the receiving end of the humiliation, the one looked down on. But tables are about to turn, and she has no idea. Let me back up for a second. I'm realizing you probably need some context. Who are we? How did we get here? Why is my sister such a raging bitch to me? And what's this secret ace I have up my sleeve? Grab a drink, because this is one hell of a family story. My name's Jake. I'm 28 years old, and until a month ago I was, by most of my family's standards, and definitely by my sister's, pretty much a screw-up. Or at least that's the narrative Ashley's always pushed. She's 32 years older than me, and from the time I could walk and talk she's been Miss Perfect. Perfect grades, perfect teeth, perfect life. Or so everyone thought. We grew up in a small farm town about an hour outside Wichita, Kansas. Real Friday night football and church on Sunday type of town. Our parents raised us in a cozy 2-story farmhouse that's been in Mom's family for generations. We weren't poor, but money was always tight. Dad worked at the local grain elevator, Mom's a school secretary. Good, honest, hard-working folks. They did everything to provide for us. And Ashley, she took every opportunity and ran with it. I'll give her that. From a young age, she had this fierce drive. Valedictorian of our high school class, full ride to a fancy East Coast university, Ashley always wanted to get as far from small-town Kansas as possible. She barely looked back. Ended up with a master's degree by 24, then landed a high-paying job in finance out in New York City. Now she's a senior something or other making 6 figures, living in a high-rise in Manhattan. It's the kind of success our family never really imagined for one of our own. Me, I stayed closer to home. I went to a state college an hour away and, well, I struggled. Academically, socially. While Ashley was off collecting honor cords and internships, I was slogging through remedial algebra and changing majors like 5 times. I finally got a degree in communications, but by then I wasn't sure what the hell to do with it. I drifted a bit, ended up doing some freelance graphic design and odd jobs to pay rent. It wasn't a terrible life I managed. I lived with 3 roommates in Wichita, drove a beat-up 04 pickup, scraped by. But to Ashley, that meant I was a loser. Plain and simple. She never missed a chance to compare us. Every time she flew home for Christmas or Thanksgiving, she'd arrive with shiny new luggage, expensive gifts for Mom and Dad, to show off, I suspect, and endless stories about her fabulous city life. And then there was me, her awkward kid brother who still lived in Kansas, made maybe $30,000 on a good year, and, according to her, had no ambition. I remember one Christmas a couple years ago, we were at the dinner table, similar to tonight, passing mashed potatoes around. My uncle asked me how work was going. I started telling him about a website design I just finished for a local business. Before I could even finish a sentence, Ashley cut in with a condescending little laugh and said, "Oh, Jake's business. It's basically him goofing off on his computer. I keep telling him he should get a real job." I wanted to fling my fork at her. Instead I mumbled something about how freelance is a real job, and Dad tried to change the topic by asking Ashley about her work. She happily launched into a brag about her latest promotion, completely oblivious to how she just belittled me. Or maybe she wasn't oblivious, she just didn't care. That's how it's always been. Ashley the achiever and Jake the family disappointment. Over time, that narrative sank into me and settled like a stone in my gut. I won't lie, I started to believe it myself. That I was a failure. That maybe I was lazy or not good enough. I went through some dark depressive spells feeling like I'd never measure up, that my family, especially my sister, would never respect me no matter what I did. But despite all that, I stayed. I stayed in Kansas when Ashley never did. See, while she was jet-setting off to vacation in Europe or whatever, I was the one who drove home on weekends to help Dad repair the roof, or to mow Grandma and Grandpa's lawn when they got too old to do it. I was the one who showed up when Grandpa had his hip replacement and needed someone to bring groceries and take him to physical therapy. Not Ashley, she was too busy to even call during those months. I remember sitting next to Grandpa's hospital bed after his surgery, holding his hand while he slept, wondering if Ashley even knew he was in the hospital. Mom had said she texted her, but who knows? She certainly didn't fly home to help. I didn't do any of that expecting a reward. They're my grandparents, and I loved them. When Grandma passed away 2 years ago, I was devastated. I had been very close with her. She was warm, kind, and always had fresh cookies and a hug for me. We all took it hard, especially Grandpa, who lost his partner of 60 years. After Grandma's funeral, Ashley came for precisely 2 days. She showed up for the service looking appropriately somber, I guess. She gave Grandpa a stiff, brief hug. I remember that clearly. Grandpa was sitting in his armchair, frail and quiet after burying the love of his life, and Ashley perched on the arm of the chair, patted his shoulder awkwardly, said some canned line like "I'm so sorry for your loss," then promptly left to take a work call. Meanwhile, I stayed with Grandpa for a week after, sleeping on the couch, helping Dad sort through Grandma's belongings. I sat with Grandpa in the evenings listening to his stories, even the same ones he'd told 100 times, because I knew he just needed company. Ashley had already flown back to New York by then, citing an urgent project. She barely even said goodbye to him. I think that was the moment I truly lost any respect I still had for my sister. Grandpa soldiered on for another year and a half after Grandma died. His health was never the same, though. I visited him every week. Sometimes I'd find him in his armchair, staring at the old wedding photo on the mantel. I could tell he was holding on, maybe more for our sake than his. Last year, around Christmas, which Ashley did not bother coming home for, by the way, she sent a fancy gift basket as a substitute, how thoughtful, Grandpa called me over. He had been getting weaker, a bad cough that wouldn't go away. I walked in to find him struggling with a box of old photo albums, stubbornly trying to pull it off a high shelf. I scolded him gently and took it down myself. We ended up sitting on the living room floor looking through those faded pictures for hours, Grandpa telling me stories behind each photo. Him as a young man in a crisp army uniform. Grandma in a polka dot dress on their honeymoon. My mom as a baby. At one point we found an old photo of Ashley and me as kids, maybe 8 and 6, playing on a tire swing in Grandpa's backyard. I was missing my 2 front teeth, grinning ear to ear. Ashley was mid-swing, her hair flying, both of us carefree and happy. We used to be close, believe it or not. I don't remember those days well, but the photo doesn't lie, we were buddies once. I stared at that picture and started tearing up, wishing things hadn't changed so much. Grandpa must have noticed my eyes welling. He put a hand on my shoulder and said, "Your grandma and I, we're so proud of you, Jake." I had to look away, because I really was about to full-on cry at that. No one says that to me. Proud of me? For what? I shook my head and muttered something about how I hadn't exactly done much to be proud of. Grandpa frowned, like he knew exactly what I meant. "Don't you listen to anyone who makes you feel less, you hear me," he said, voice surprisingly firm for 90 years old. "You have a heart of gold. You've been here for your family. That matters. A damn sight more than some fancy job." I'll never forget that. It was like he could read my mind, read all the self-doubt and insecurity that had built up in me after years of Ashley's sneers and the family's silent comparisons. I nodded, unable to speak, just swallowing the lump in my throat. Grandpa wasn't done though. He sighed and looked at the photo of young us again. "Your sister, well, she lost her way somewhere. Got too big for her britches." That phrase made me chuckle wetly. It was such a grandpa thing to say. She always was clever, but she doesn't have what you have. Heart. Loyalty. She'll realize it one day, maybe when it's too late. He gave a sad sort of smile. "Don't you worry. Just keep being you, Jake." I didn't fully understand what he meant by when it's too late, but I had an uneasy feeling. I told him I loved him, and he squeezed my hand. We didn't talk about Ashley after that, but his words stuck with me. Early this year, Grandpa's health took a serious downturn. He had congestive heart failure, and it got worse quickly. In February, we nearly lost him when he had a bad episode of shortness of breath. The doctors said it might be any day now, or he could hang on a few months. It was hard to predict. I moved back into my parents' house temporarily, which is just a few miles from Grandpa's, so I could help out more. Mom and Dad were trying to balance work and taking care of him, and I wasn't going to let them do it alone. I called Ashley to tell her how bad things were getting. It went to voicemail, of course it did. I doubted she'd pick up if she saw her loser brother calling. I left her a long message explaining that Grandpa was really sick and that if she wanted to see him, she should probably come home soon. I even offered to pay half her flight if money was an issue, though we both know it isn't. She makes more in a month than I do in a year. She didn't respond. Nothing. Not a call back, not even a text. I know she got the message, but she just ignored it. I was so angry I had to take a long drive to cool down that evening. Our grandfather was on his deathbed, and Ashley apparently could not be bothered. A week later, Grandpa passed away. Peacefully, thank God, in his sleep at home, with Mom holding one hand and me holding the other. It was heartbreaking, but I was glad I could be there in his final moments. We called Ashley repeatedly that night. She finally answered around 11 p.m. our time, sounding annoyed to be disturbed, until Mom managed to choke out, "Dad's gone." "He's gone, honey." I could hear Ashley's shocked silence on the line. To give her credit, she did fly in for the funeral that time, but she arrived late, literally as the service was starting, and left less than 24 hours later. I barely got to speak to her beyond a stiff hello and goodbye. She didn't shed a tear that I saw. Maybe she grieves differently, but it felt cold, distant, like she was just doing a duty and then rushing off. She did have the nerve to complain quietly to me that the flight cost her $1,200 because it was last minute. I just stared at her in disbelief. Grandpa died, and you're griping about airfare? Really? After Grandpa's funeral, things were tense. Mom and her sister, my Aunt June, were the ones handling the estate stuff at first, since Grandpa had some assets and property. There was mention of a will, but at the time we were too consumed by grief to think about it. Ashley didn't ask about any will or inheritance at all at that point. She probably assumed, like we all did, that whatever little money or property there was would be split evenly among family or something. Our family isn't huge, just my mom and aunt as Grandpa's kids, and then us grandkids. Grandma and Grandpa weren't extremely wealthy or anything. They had a nice house on a bit of land, some savings, a modest stock portfolio, maybe. Certainly not a massive fortune. But the house and farmland alone were worth a decent chunk, and there were some antique furniture and valuables. All told, perhaps a few $100,000 in assets, give or take? Not chump change to us normal folks. About a month after Grandpa passed, we set up a meeting with his lawyer for the will reading. That sounds formal. It was really just a meeting at the lawyer's office in town, with Mom, and June, me, and Ashley, who attended via video call since she couldn't be bothered to fly in again. I remember that day clearly. It was a brisk March morning. I felt odd and nervous. I'd never been part of a will reading before. Ashley's face was just a little square on the lawyer's laptop screen, looking mildly interested at best, probably already thinking about her next meeting back at work. The lawyer, a kindly old gentleman named Mr. Thompson, read out the formalities. As expected, Grandpa left a bunch of personal items to various people, some furniture to my mom, his vintage rifle to my uncle, stuff like that. Then came the big items, the house, the land, and the rest of his financial assets. I was half expecting it to be split, like maybe Mom and Aunt June get the land, or all grandkids get something. What actually happened left me stunned. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat and read Grandpa's words. To my grandson, Jake, who has been my greatest comfort in my final years, I bequeath the entirety of my estate including the house, 40 acres of land, and all other financial assets therein. I know he will honor my legacy and care for our family home. To my granddaughter, Ashley, I leave my love and the hope that she will understand this decision someday. I swear my ears rang. I sat there, mouth open, replaying those words in my head to make sure I hadn't imagined them. The entirety of my estate, to Jake. That's me. All of it. And Ashley, only my love. Basically, nothing. She was cut out completely, aside from that thinly veiled message. The room was dead silent for a heavy few seconds. I think even Mr. Thompson was bracing himself, stealing a glance at the laptop screen where Ashley's face was. My heart was pounding, again, but in a completely different way than earlier in the kitchen when Ashley humiliated me. This was shock and disbelief and, I'll admit it, a surge of vindication. Grandpa really did that for me? He really left me everything? On the laptop screen, Ashley's face went through a series of contortions so quickly it was almost comical. First, a frown like she wasn't sure she heard right. Then her eyes went wide. Then she laughed a single, harsh bark of laughter, as if saying, "You've got to be kidding me. Is this some kind of joke?" she snapped, her voice tinny through the speaker. Mr. Thompson calmly read a couple more legal lines, explaining that the estate included roughly $250,000 in various investments and bank accounts, plus the property and house valued at about $400,000, plus personal belongings. He concluded by saying that Grandpa's will was very clear, and that he had chosen not to leave anything to Ashley except a few old family photos, which he'd specified she receive. Ashley went ballistic. Even through the grainy video, I could see she was absolutely livid. "Mom, are you hearing this?" she practically yelled, looking off camera. She must have been on the call from her office or something. I'm not sure she was alone on her end. My mom looked torn, unhappy but not surprised. Actually, I saw a knowing look in Mom's eyes. That sly old fox, Grandpa, he must have told Mom his plan beforehand, or at least hinted. Mom wasn't shocked. She just looked sad. She said quietly, "Yes, I hear it, Ashley." "This is unbelievable," Ashley hissed. "He left it all to Jake." She said my name like it was dirt. I flinched, feeling a mix of guilt and triumph swirling in my stomach. I hadn't asked for this hell. I hadn't even imagined this outcome. I would have been happy if he left me his old Chevy truck and maybe a bit of land to remember him by. But this was huge. Aunt June looked uncomfortable and stayed silent. Mr. Thompson kept his professional demeanor and said, "I understand this may be a surprise. I can assure you, these were your grandfather's wishes. The will was executed properly and witnessed. He was of sound mind." He must have anticipated Ashley's reaction, because he immediately added that any attempt to contest the will would likely be futile. Grandpa had even included a no contest clause. I learned the term right then, which basically said if anyone tries to contest, they'd forfeit any claim and the estate would go to charity instead, or something along those lines. Ashley was red in the face and sputtering. I just can't believe this. After everything, I'm his granddaughter too. Why would he? She trailed off, and then I saw something rare, Ashley's eyes filling with tears. Real ones, it seemed. For a split second, I felt a pang of pity. She looked genuinely hurt and confused. Despite everything, she probably never imagined Grandpa would skip her over entirely. Honestly, I was confused too. I mean, I had some idea why he might have her absence in his last years, her attitude, but all of it? Mom finally spoke up, an edge to her voice. Ashley, you practically never came to see him. Jake was there day in and day out. Dad made his choice. We have to respect it. Hearing Mom defend the decision, and by extension, me, was surprising. Ashley's head snapped in Mom's direction on her screen. So you knew about this? She asked in an accusatory tone. Mom sighed. I found out his decision shortly before he died. I told him it was his to make, and I'd support whatever he felt was right. Ashley looked betrayed. I can't believe you didn't tell me. Mom's eyes flashed. And have that fight with Dad in his final days? It wasn't my place. Frankly, Ashley, do you really not understand why he did this? Mom rarely gets angry, but I could tell she'd had it. He was hurt. You distanced yourself for years. He wanted to help the one who helped him. I sat there silent through all of this, my head spinning. Part of me felt like I should speak up and say I didn't need everything, maybe we could find a fair way. But another part of me replayed every sneer, every put down, every time Ashley treated me and even our folks and grandparents like we were less. And I stayed quiet. I won't lie, I was also afraid if I spoke, Ashley would just lash out at me with something like I manipulated Grandpa, which I absolutely did not. It ended with Ashley abruptly leaving the call. Actually, she angrily yelled, "Go to hell." Not sure at who specifically, maybe all of us, and hung up on the video chat. The lawyer looked a bit uncomfortable. And June let out a breath, and Mom just shook her head, teary-eyed. When I walked out of that office, clutching a folder of estate papers and a copy of the will naming me Solaire, I felt like I was in some alternate reality. I also felt guilty. I didn't want to blow up my relationship with my only sibling over money or a house. Hell, initially I thought maybe I'd share it or something, try to talk to her once she cooled down, maybe give her a portion as a goodwill gesture. I certainly didn't feel like I deserved it all. I was just doing what a grandson should do. But any hope of a rational conversation died quickly. She refused to talk to me after that day. The few times I tried calling her, she sent me straight to voicemail. She texted me once a venom-filled rant accusing me of manipulating our grandparents to steal what was hers. She said I was a snake and that I'd regret crossing her. It was nasty. Among the highlights, she accused me of brainwashing Grandpa while he was vulnerable, taking advantage of a senile old man. She even implied I'd faked the will somehow. It was insane and hurtful. I didn't respond. What could I even say? It was Grandpa's choice, and nothing I said would change her mind that I wasn't the villain. Mom and Dad urged me to just give her time. She's emotional, Dad said. She'll come around eventually. They were optimistic, but I wasn't. Ashley's sense of entitlement ran deep, and an apology certainly wasn't coming from her side. Over the next few weeks, I started handling estate matters. I moved into Grandpa's old house, technically mine now, which still felt surreal to think about. I drove Grandpa's old Chevy truck. It fired right up after a jump and some TLC, God, that made me smile. I also started the process of sorting through his things, selling what needed selling, managing accounts. I met again with Mr. Thompson to make sure everything was squared away legally. Ashley was true to her word about making things hell. She had apparently called Mr. Thompson a few times to yell at him or question the will, but with the no contest clause and her having no legal standing, it was all pointless. He assured me she couldn't do anything except make noise. Honestly, inheriting all this didn't suddenly make me a fancy rich guy or anything. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't strapped for cash. I paid off my student loans and the remaining mortgage on my parents' house. Grandpa had left enough that I could do that comfortably. He'd want me to use it to help family, I knew. I didn't tell Ashley any of this, of course. We weren't talking. She sulked back in New York, and I heard from Mom that she refused to come for Easter, still stewing. That brings us to now. Thanksgiving. The first big family gathering since Grandpa's funeral and the reading of the will. Ashley, surprisingly, decided to show up to this one. Looking back, I suspect she had an ulterior motive for coming, maybe thinking she could butter up the family or me and try again to get a piece of the inheritance. Or maybe her pride just couldn't stand everyone knowing she'd been cut out, and she wanted to spin the narrative. Who knows with her? All I knew was I wasn't particularly excited to see her. I was nervous actually, stomach in knots when I heard she was flying in. We hadn't spoken except that nasty text. Mom asked me to please not bring up the will or estate at dinner, to avoid drama. I agreed. The last thing I wanted was a scene. I was hoping maybe, just maybe, Ashley had cooled off a bit and we could be civil for one damn holiday. Fat chance. She walked into our parents' house this afternoon with her usual flourish, designer coat, pricey leather boots, full face of makeup. She looked every bit the big city corporate exec visiting her humble roots. I greeted her cautiously in the foyer, saying, "Hey, Ash." She barely looked at me, eyes sliding over me with an expression that could freeze fire. "Jake." That's it. No hi, no how are you. Dinner was tense, to put it lightly. Ashley dominated the conversation at the table, regaling everyone, who politely listened, with stories of her job, her latest project, how her company sent her to London for a week, blah blah. Standard Ashley brag material. We got through the turkey and halfway through the pie when the topic of jobs and life updates came up. My cousin Daniel started talking about his new plumbing apprenticeship. Someone asked me what I was up to these days. Before I could answer, Ashley pounced. She had been waiting for that, I realize now. She let out a short laugh and said something like, "Oh, Jake's job. Why don't you tell them how you've been so busy with, what was it you do again? Still designing logos on your laptop in your pajamas." I saw my aunt's eyes widen. My dad set down his fork heavily and said, "Knock it off, Ashley." But she didn't. She turned to me with this catty smile, and that's when she dropped the line that sent me fleeing to the laundry room moments ago. "Face it, Jake. You'll always be the broke one in this family. At this point I've accepted I'll always have to be the successful sibling taking care of everyone, while you bum around without a real job." Lord, it was mean. It was so uncalled for. And in that instant, any sympathy I might have still harbored for her, any guilt or doubt about what Grandpa did, evaporated. The gall of her, playing the martyr who has to take care of everyone when she hasn't lifted a finger for any of us in years. I was shaking with anger and hurt, which brings us back to me hiding in the laundry room trying to get my shit together. So here I am, leaning against a washing machine, with the knowledge that I'm not actually the broke one anymore. In fact, by some wild twist of fate, I now have more financial security than her, probably. She doesn't know that I've already sold a small parcel of Grandpa's land for a tidy sum, or that I'm in the process of turning part of the property into a community garden in Grandma's memory, something I know Ashley would sneer at as a waste. She knows nothing about my life since the will. All she knows is she didn't get what she expected, and she hates me for it. I push myself off the washing machine, standing up straight. My heart has calmed and now beats with a steady resolve. Wiping any remaining wetness from my eyes, I square my shoulders. Enough. Enough of letting her make me feel like garbage. Enough of tiptoeing around her ego. I walk out of the laundry room, through the kitchen, and pause at the doorway back into the dining area. The family is still there, awkwardly quiet. My little outburst of leaving kind of killed the festive mood. Ashley is back at the table, scrolling on her phone casually as if nothing happened, but I can see from the redness in her cheeks that Mom or Dad must have told her off while I was gone. She looks up when she notices me. Our eyes meet. She gives me this little smug look like, "Oh, are you done sulking?" I step back into the room. My voice comes out surprisingly calm, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Actually, I do have something to share about my job, Ashley." She tilts her head, feigning surprise that I'm actually speaking for myself. "Oh, this should be good," she says snidely. I ignore the jab and address the room, though my eyes never leave my sister. My other relatives are watching, looking uneasy. You all know this year has been rough. Grandpa passing and everything. I see a few nods, sad smiles. Ashley is tapping her nails on her wine glass impatiently. I continue, voice steady. "What most of you don't know is that before he died, Grandpa made some decisions. One of those was regarding his estate. We had the will reading a while back." Dad clears his throat. "Jake, you don't have to," but I hold up a hand. "I do have to." I focus on Ashley now, my voice sharpening. "Ashley, you said I'd always be the broke one and that you'd have to take care of everyone. Funny you say that, because Grandpa felt differently." Her smug expression flickers. I can tell she senses where this is going, but she crosses her arms and rolls her eyes. "Oh, please." I take a deep breath, and just lay it out plainly, every word like a brick dropping in silence. "He left everything to me. The house, the land, the savings. All of it. And he left you nothing." You could hear a pin drop. Ashley's face goes stark white. Her mouth actually falls open in a way that would be hilarious if the moment wasn't so heavy. Around the table, there are collective gasps. My cousin practically chokes on his beer. Aunt Marie puts a hand to her chest. They knew, I guess, that I inherited the place, but maybe not the extent or the part about cutting out Ashley. Or maybe they did and just hadn't dared bring it up. We're not a confrontational family normally. Ashley's lips tremble. For a second, I think she's going to screech at me. Instead, she laughs, a high-pitched, shaky laugh. You're lying, she says, but her voice is thin. She knows it's true, she just doesn't want to believe it. Mom, Dad, she snaps, looking to our parents for backup. My dad sighs, rubbing his temples. It's true, Pumpkin, he says quietly, using the childhood nickname for her. It was Grandpa's wishes. We couldn't tell you until the will was read. Ashley's eyes dart between Dad and Mom, and then to me, then back to Dad. How could you not? Why, she can't even form a sentence. The shock on her face slowly melts into pure fury, directed straight at me. I can't believe you, she spits out. Standing there looking so smug. Did you enjoy that, dropping that bomb in front of everyone? Trying to humiliate me. I feel a surge of something bold and fierce in me. I step closer, around the table, meeting her glare with one of my own. You mean kind of like how you enjoyed humiliating me 5 minutes ago? I say, voice rising. In front of everyone. Calling me a broke loser with no job. That kind of like that, Ashley. She leaps up from her chair, nearly knocking it over. Don't twist this. That was a joke. Bullshit, I snap, my tone surprising even myself. A couple relatives murmur in shock language at the dinner table, oh my. I don't care anymore. You've been doing this to me for years, Ashley. Years. Putting me down, mocking my choices, making me feel like garbage. I never said anything. I took it. Every damn time. Well, not anymore. She's actually shaking, whether from rage or panic or both. You think you're so high and mighty now, huh? Just because Gramps decided to throw you a bone on his way out, she snarls. You're still the same failure you were before. Enjoy playing Lord of the Manor in that rundown old house. It won't make you successful. It won't make you a real man. I feel a flare of hurt at that last line. She sure knows how to aim low, but I catch Mom's eye across the table. She's silently pleading me to keep my cool. I take a slow breath. This isn't about success, Ashley. It's about you being a decent human being, and the fact that you're not. She scoffs, rolling her eyes dramatically, but I barrel on, years of pent-up hurt fueling me. Grandpa left me the estate because I was there for him, because I cared, because I didn't treat family like burdens or embarrassments. You want to know the exact words he left for you in his will? Her face falters a bit. She probably never actually listened fully in the reading. He said he left you his love and hoped you'd understand his decision one day. That's it. His love. I emphasize those last words sharply. They hang in the air like a dagger. What do you think that means, huh? She blinks rapidly. I can see tears forming, though she's trying so hard not to let them fall. Her voice comes out a little cracked. Screw you, Jake. I stare at her, my jaw clenched. Grandpa saw what you are, Ashley. Selfish. Arrogant. He wanted to help the grandchild who actually gave a damn about this family. And honestly, I agree with him. That was the first time I admitted out loud that I agree with his decision. And God, it feels freeing. Righteous, even. Ashley's composure is crumbling. You manipulated him. You turned him against me, she chokes out, a tear finally spilling down her cheek. You've always been jealous of me, and you took advantage of him when he was old and confused. I shake my head slowly, a humorless laugh escaping. He was 10 times sharper than you give him credit for. And so is Grandma, by the way, who also agreed with him. She told him years ago to do what he thought was right. Do you know how badly you must have screwed up for Grandma and Grandpa to cut you out like that? They loved you, Ashley, but you burned that bridge. At the mention of Grandma, Ashley's face falls. She wipes her tears angrily. I can't believe you're doing this, making me the villain. I gesture broadly. You did that yourself. All I'm doing is refusing to play the victim anymore. I look around at my family, who are still sitting in stunned silence, witnessing this sibling showdown that has been brewing for years. I'm done being her punching bag, I say to them, voice thick but resolute. I'm done. No one disagrees. A few nod subtly. Dad looks profoundly sad but he doesn't speak. Mom is openly crying now, dabbing her eyes. She hates the conflict but maybe even she sees it was inevitable. Ashley stands there, breathing hard. I can practically see the wheels turning in her head, scrambling for some footing. Her eyes flick to the curious, scandalized stares of our relatives, and I know she hates that they're seeing her facade crack. Her pride is probably screaming, so she does what she always does, tries to save face. Fine, she says, voice dripping with scorn, wiping at her face one more time to erase any evidence of tears. Enjoy your pity prize, Jake. Milk it for all it's worth. It's clearly all you'll ever have. With that, she grabs her purse from the table and marches toward the door. Ashley, wait, Mom calls, but Ashley blows past her. I hear the front door fling open, then slam shut a moment later. She's gone. Left in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner after causing a scene. How's that for family drama? There's a beat of stunned silence. I realize I'm standing there, chest heaving from the adrenaline, in front of everyone. My hands are shaking again, but this time it's the aftermath of confrontation, something I'm not very used to. I clear my throat and manage, sorry, everyone. My cousin Daniel, bless him, raises his beer and says, that was one hell of a show, cuz. It breaks the tension. A few people chuckle awkwardly, and June sighs and mumbles something about always knew those two would explode one day. Mom comes over and gives me a hug, her petite frame shaking a bit. I'm so sorry, honey, she whispers. She had no right to say those things to you. Not tonight, not ever. Dad joins us, patting my back. Proud of you, son, he says gruffly. You stood up for yourself. I wish it hadn't come to that tonight. I nod, understanding. It sucks that it had to blow up at a family holiday, but in a way, I'm glad it's finally all out in the open. The whole family saw it, saw her, saw what I've been dealing with. I'm not the lazy little brother in their eyes tonight. I think I might have gained some respect, actually, for calling her out and for, well, being the one Grandpa trusted. We managed to finish dinner in a quieter, subdued manner. The pecan pie tastes like sawdust after all that, but I nibble it anyway. Small talk resumes, cautiously. Everyone pointedly avoids talking about what just happened, instead commenting on how moist the turkey was or how cold it's getting outside. Fine by me. Inside, I feel like a shaken soda can ready to explode or collapse or both. I keep replaying the look on Ashley's face when I told her. Shock, hurt, rage. And now, after all the yelling, I mostly just feel a sad kind of exhaustion. This is my sister. We share a childhood, a family, blood. And now, I don't know where we stand. That might have been a breaking point. An hour later, most of the relatives have left or are getting ready to. The ones staying in town say goodbye with extra warm hugs to me and sympathetic smiles. They all feel the awkwardness but try to be supportive. Hang in there, kid, Uncle Kevin says, clapping my shoulder. Congrats on the inheritance. I guess, a cousin whispers uncertainly, making me snort laugh despite myself. Eventually it's just me, Mom, and Dad cleaning up the aftermath in the kitchen. I insist they let me wash the dishes since I kind of derailed dinner. It's the least I can do. I'm scrubbing a casserole dish when my phone buzzes in my pocket. I already know who it is. Ashley must have cooled down just enough to decide she has more to say. I pull out my phone with soapy hands, glancing at the screen. Yep, it's a text from Ashley. Several, actually, sent over the last half hour as she presumably sat in her rental car or wherever. They start hostile enough. You humiliated me in front of the whole family. Are you happy now? Grandpa would be disgusted with how you acted. I scoff under my breath at that one. Classic projection, if only she could hear herself. Then they shift to more plaintive. I can't believe you told everyone like that. You don't understand how hard this is for me. And then, the kicker, the final one that came a minute ago. Can we please just talk? I didn't mean what I said. We can work something out about the estate. It's not fair for you to have it all. I'm your sister. Can you at least give me something? There it is. The ask. Now she's crying, begging for a share. I can almost hear the whine in her voice through the text. I picture her with mascara streaked, typing furiously, then pausing to play the victim, then switching to pleading when anger didn't get her what she wanted. It's so her it almost makes me laugh. I dry my hands and show the texts to Mom and Dad, who have been hovering nearby worriedly. Mom sighs, reading them. Oh Ashley, she murmurs, a mix of sadness and disappointment. Dad shakes his head. Son, it's your call how you want to respond. Don't let us influence you. But remember, she's family, though she hasn't acted like it, he adds with a scowl. I stare at the messages for a long moment. Do I feel bad for her? A tiny part of me does. Losing out on the inheritance clearly rattled her, maybe made her realize how badly she screwed up. Or maybe she just cares about the money. Probably the money. If she truly cared about me or our grandparents' memory, she wouldn't have acted like an entitled brat even tonight. I think about Grandpa's frail voice. Don't you listen to anyone who makes you feel less. She'll realize it when it's too late. He predicted this, in a way. It is too late. Too late to patch things with me by bargaining for money. Too late to make things right with the grandparents she basically abandoned while they were alive. I take my phone, scroll to the reply box. My fingers hover. I'm not even sure what to say. I feel a swell of finality. This inheritance, it's not just money or land. It's validation. It's years of love and care from my grandparents made tangible. It's Grandpa saying I see you, Jake. I value you. And Ashley has no claim to that. Not after how she's treated all of us. I simply type, I owe you nothing. This was Grandpa's decision. I'm just carrying out his wishes. She reads it immediately, those three little dots flash up, she's typing back. A response comes through, a last-ditch guilt trip. So you're really going to do this to me? Your own sister? Fine. Enjoy your blood money. Don't ever ask me for anything. I don't plan to, sis, I think, as I lock the phone and slip it back in my pocket without replying further. That's likely the end of that conversation for now. I inhale slowly, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. In the other room, I catch a glimpse of the old photo on the wall, me and Ashley on that tire swing as kids, frozen in happier times. It's bittersweet. We were innocent then, before life took us in such different directions. Maybe someday she'll truly understand what she's lost, more than just money. But that's on her. I didn't cause this, she did. And now she has to live with the consequences of her actions. I join my parents in the living room, where the fireplace has died down to embers. Mom asks softly if I'm okay. I think for a moment. Yeah, I say, and realize I mean it. I am. It hurts, but I'm okay. Because for the first time, I stood up to my sister. I defended myself. And I honored my grandparents' wishes without caving to her demands. As I hug my mom goodnight later and climb into my truck to drive back to my house, Grandpa's house, now mine, I allow myself a small, grim smile. Ashley can cry and beg all she wants. Too late, sis. You made your bed. Now lie in it.